We have Aravind Jayan and Nisha Susan with us. They'll be talking about Arvind's debut novel, Teen Couple Have Fun Outdoors. It's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. Aravind Jayan is from Trivandrum, Kerala. He is the winner of the 2017 Toto Award for Fiction and was shortlisted for the Commonwealth Short Story Prize in 2021. His first novel, Teen Couple Have Fun Outdoors, was published by Serpent's Tail in 2022. He lives in Bangalore. Nisha Susan is a writer and editor. She is the co-founder of two award-winning media companies, The Lady's Finger and Grist Media. Her book, The Women Who Forgot to Invent Facebook and Other Stories, was published in 2020. She currently writes Cheap Thrills, a column on millennials, time, and obsessions for Mint Lounge. Thank you for joining us. Over to you, Nisha.
Hello. Okay. I was told there's some highly technical way of running this mic. Namrata has frightened me, okay? I'm very happy that it's working. Hi, thanks for coming. Did you all get coffee? No? Okay. Did you get coffee?
Yeah, mine here, actually.
Okay. So, Aravind, I want to tell you, there's a member of the audience who I will not identify, protecting his identity. He saw another member of his family reading your book, and he asked this very potent question. Amma, what is this sus book you are reading? Okay. So I'm sure that it would echo for you, because your family also had some questions about the sus title.
I think everybody had questions about the sus title. I've shortened it wherever possible to just say teen couple. But then,
and this is helpful?
This, I think, makes things really vague. I say, so they say, so you've written a book. I think my aunt is the one who likes to introduce me as a writer. And they say, so you've written a book. What have you written? What's the name of it? And I say teen couple. And then they say, is this a teenage kind of romance sort of situation? And then my aunt goes, Ila, tell them the full name of the book.
Yes.
So then I have to go, Teen Couple Have Fun Outdoors. And inevitably, they don't hear it the first time I say it. So I have to repeat it again, like Teen Couple Have Fun Outdoors.
Yes. And each time making it sound more pornographic than the previous.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. Okay. I think some of the weird uncles in the group might hint at the get at the pornographic nature of what I'm saying. But then obviously, nonetheless, they ask me what it's about, and I have to find like different ways of summarizing it. Okay. Yeah.
So
although I just tell them it's about a sex tape.
You do tell them it's about a sex tape.
I just tell them
you've reached that stage.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so that's what I wanted to know. Do you tell them it's about a sex tape, or do you tell them that it's about the nature of marriage? Or
I tell them it's about a sex tape.
And that's
I've done all that stuff. I've started off with it's about the complicated explanations, the real literary criticism stuff, like it's about the nature of society and things like that, and
the human condition,
and people today, contemporary society, things like that. Now I just say it's about a sex scandal.
So there's this amazing line in the book which is the opening line of one chapter, which is, there is sex and then there is the sex scandal. And I feel this is a very good description of the book, because and I should just quickly explain what the book is actually about. It's set in Trivandrum, and that's a big part of the book. And it's narrated by a young man whose family has this sudden asteroid attack, okay, which is that his older brother's sex tape has leaked. And they live in a colony. He goes to work. Everybody has jobs. And now there is the sex tape. And what happens from that moment onwards is the book. And it's an amazing book. I laughed like every page made me laugh. Okay, and the person who asked his mother why she was reading this sus book, part of the reason why he was asking this is because it was such an involving book that she kept like laughing and hating one particular character and saying, oh, he's so unbearable. And it is really that kind of book. You really get very, very involved, right? So I mean, I urge you to run out after the session and get your copy if you haven't already.
Nisha.
So the thing I wanted to ask you is, given that it has such a hot button topic, which, you know, people obviously want to discuss, the internet and porn and sex tapes and everything, like when confronted with the book, do you feel like they might miss the fact that it's really funny and there's a kind of literary project that is also happening in this book? Did you occasionally feel that little bit of a thing about the kind of responses you've had to the book so far?
I think readers in India really appreciate the fact that it's funny, and then that they appreciate the entirety of it. It's good. There's a lot going on, and that is very relatable, and all of that stuff. I think, and I was complaining to you about this very recently, and it's a very weird thing to complain about, because it's sort of like telling a reviewer or somebody who's liked your book that you're in essence liking it wrong.
Right,
you're not liking it the way I.
You just want
like
me
it.
for my body, you know.
Yeah,
like,
basically, yeah.
Right.
So sometimes with reviews from abroad, you get the sense that what they're looking for is a sort of big picture statement on the country. And once they get that, they don't really look into the other things that are being said in the book. So at times that is kind of like, in the beginning I used to be like, but you missed all of this stuff. You should talk about this.
Right.
But then I talked to another writer who was like, yeah, you'll never get a review that you are satisfied with.
Just take what you can get.
Just take what you're going to get. He was like, I can't even believe you're complaining about this stuff. Do not complain to anybody else. But I've done that now, so I'm sorry.
So it's a fair point, because Aravind is like hugely successful. All the reviews are raves. It's been
I don't know about that. But
it's been translated into Swedish. There are translations forthcoming. He's big in Sweden, as they say. He's big in Sweden, and there are translations forthcoming in Italian.
I'm not big in Sweden. I did the talk. They asked me to go to the talk in Sweden, Gothenburg Book Fair.
They only call you and the Nobel Prize winner, so you're like big in Sweden.
There were like
dude.
5 people in the audience.
That's all of Sweden's population. And
while I was talking, the cameraman literally turned off the camera, packed his gear, and walked away.
Okay. I'm like slightly reconsidering my event. But maybe you'll...
No, yeah, it is big in Sweden. Let's say it's big in Sweden.
And soon to be big in Italy, and which other country? Germany.
Germany and France.
Okay, lovely. So, given that, I mean, these reviewers are all just like loving you for your body, what was it that you were trying to do in this book?
Actually, I mean, it's not far off that. When I started the book, I just thought one day that it would be funny to write about sex. Basically, because growing up, at least in my experience, no one was really talking about it. And most importantly, everyone was very coy about it. I don't think... I have a vague memory of like a sex education class in school. I went to a boys' school. It was basically... in biology class, when we got to the reproduction section, instead of the biology teacher, the Malayalam sir came in, and he did what was, in essence, like a 15-minute stand-up set on the sexual stuff. And then he was off. Like, he was in for like less than 15 minutes. And this is a vague memory. I don't know if this is... I've combined a couple of things, but he's come in and he said these vague things, and he left, and it was like lightning session.
Right.
And it was so fast, it was sort of like he was walking down the corridor, he saw the empty class, he came and cracked up a couple of lewd jokes that went.
Oh no.
Wasn't sure if it was a sex ed session or he just thought
just had a stroke.
Yeah, these boys just sitting there chilling, we'll just go crack a few jokes and I'll leave.
But this is very familiar. Like, I remember my bio teacher, oddly also Malayali man, called George Kuti, who's famous for saying Kamal is a Mamal. At that section, he said, all this you all know, and then skip to the next chapter. I was like, no, please, I mean, go on. Just anyway.
Yeah, all this.
Yeah. So you felt that, okay, I get that. A lot of, I mean, when I think about this book, like stray lines, like I'm reminded of it and it cracks me up. When he was saying that, Indian readers really relate to it, I'll give you an example. There's a bit where a character has collected a lot of like memorabilia of his romance, the girlfriend's scrunchie, some coffee cup, all kinds of things stashed away. And one day he comes home and finds his father has taken everything and thrown it in the trash. Okay, so he's having a fit and he's screaming at his father and saying, "How dare you go into my room?" And his father says, "Why? Is your room an embassy?" Okay. And then it was like, it's such a specifically like father sarcasm thing that it's great. So I wondered, could you read a little bit from the book, please?
Let me just find the page. So this is basically the narrator talking about his experience in college about dating and sex, basically. In the beginning of my first year at university, I was buoyed by Srinath's success with Anita and asked a classmate if she wanted to get coffee. Her name was Fiona, and the reason I liked her, aside from the fact that she was cute, was that she seemed as nervous as I was walking around campus. On our first outing, I narrated not only my entire life story, but also the plot of 2 blockbuster Malayalam movies and a novel. Fiona went the other way. She must have said 10 or 11 sentences in total, not counting her order to the waiter. Maybe she was bored, I don't know. Or maybe I had failed to convey the fact that this was a date. The whole time we were together, I got the feeling that she was waiting for me to get to the point. Offer her a job, push insurance, give her a medical diagnosis. We didn't go out again. Fiona eventually became a pianist in the university band and even played as a forward, my same position, for the women's football team. Maybe I should have waited till second year to ask her out, the way Srinath had done it. For the rest of university, we smiled at each other, but acted like the outing had never happened. Every time I saw her, I imagined us racing a pen of football players and felt a dull pain. Anyway, this was more or less my official dating record, and though it looks comically vacant, as far as I know, I was the rule, not the exception. My only other significant experience was something I was pretty proud of. It was also far more unusual in that it had happened with a guy, a school friend of mine, and a fellow topper in history who sometimes sent me torrent links to movies and music. His university was in Delhi, but he'd come home for a week because his grandfather had died running the 10K Get Moving marathon. My friend and I were in the upstairs bedroom in his family's old house. His parents, also visiting, were asleep downstairs. We were done with a large bottle of vodka and 2 hours of a horrible jazz documentary when he started talking about massage parlors in Delhi that offered happy endings and how much happy endings cost. And would I like one for free? If I've learned anything from Appa, it's to recognize a good deal. The next day, I was euphoric. To be clear, I was then and still am on the straight end of the spectrum. So the euphoria wasn't about some sudden sexual awakening. One reason I was so happy was that my friend and I were completely normal with each other. What he said about the night before was, "I hope that wasn't weird for you." And what I said was, "Nah." "Cool," he said. "I am bi, by the way." "Cool," I said. There was none of that, "Please keep this to yourself," or "It was a mistake," or "Man, I was so drunk I can't remember anything, haha business." Another reason I was happy was that I myself felt no guilt or worry or confusion whatsoever. I'd gone with the flow. To me, this was evidence that I wasn't some small town rube. Back home, lying in bed for a mid-morning nap, I heard the washing machine downstairs, Appa and Amma sifting for some lost documents, Srinath shouting, "Did someone use my Mark III to shave their armpits? The blade is..." I looked outside my window and saw the tops of coconut trees and felt I'd pull a fast one on everybody. I also figured something like this counted twice as much as any experience Srinath had ever had, since it was rarer and more sophisticated. Though, of course, I didn't tell him. On the whole, it was like I was about to enter an elevated kind of existence. The morning after I watched Srinath's video was the opposite. Thank you.
That's lovely. Actually, it brings me to a question that I've been like thinking about. There's something interesting in this book about this young man who wants to be a sophisticated, like a global person, and is constantly thinking about how this life in his household, his job, his education, and particularly the city, is limiting his access to sophistication and a bigger avenue, right? But at the same time, you see all the things he's actually doing in Trivandrum, which is a big life. Like he has, like he's angry, he goes off to play football. He's in some moment where he's trying to dramatize, self-dramatize. He makes a sort of Werner Herzog reference because that's what he's doing. There is a tension of wanting to be appreciated for watching art cinema. So he's like this person who screens the art cinema. I come like all the time. Why don't they say hi to me? You know, like, so there is this like tension, but there is also like a very sly picture of a cool city. Like there's also that happening. So I wanted to ask you, you grew up in Trivandrum. Like, what do you like about it? What is your favorite part of Trivandrum? And you really like enjoy Trivandrum when you read the book, despite the claustrophobia and the drama.
In fact, I really enjoy Trivandrum whenever I go back now. It was only when I was actually growing up there, when it seemed like there was no possibility of escape, that it seemed like it was very claustrophobic. And I know in the book, in the book, he's very aggressively acquiring culture, cultural capital. And he's talking about Bangalore like it's some amazing place where if he comes, he can go to screenings every day and attend talks like this and and go to clubs and things like that. I had an image like that as well. But then the thing is that I came to Bangalore and I did fuck all. Like,
Welcome to us.
same things I did in Trivandrum, I do here. But now that there's a possibility that once you know you can leave it, it's much easier to be there. It's that claustrophobia of worrying that you can't leave the city that makes it so depressing. But aside from that, I love the people in Trivandrum a lot. I love that the city is actually, I mean, I don't want to say small, but in essence, it is small compared to Bangalore. And I hated school also, actually. But looking back, I can see fond things about it as well.
And what do you think? I mean, do you feel like there is a sort of perhaps youthful, but also like a social compulsion to say that if you live in a small town, it's not a good life? Do you feel like that? I'll give you an example. Like I met somebody in Jalpaiguri, and then we had nothing in common. So I asked her the obvious question, which is, how do you like living in Jalpaiguri? In this voice, of course. And she was just like, you idiot, okay. And then she said, it's great, I love it. It's a really cultured place, And I was so interested in this sincere response. And then she told me all the things that she does. She has a full life. And I was just thinking, there is a compulsion. And it's such a interesting compulsion. There's a Ramanujan poem from the Agam poems where a woman in a matter of 6 lines is complained about everything. Lover is gone, mother is horrible, everything. And the last line is, when do I get out of this dump of a town? Okay. Assuming that Ramanujan has inserted himself in it, in the translation a little bit, but still the sentiment is this, like, when do we leave? So do you feel it's like a youthful thing? Do you feel that in the way that our country is organized, we are supposed to feel that in small towns we have nothing going on?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think I mean, to be honest, Trivandrum is not a small town. It's more like is like what? Like
it's a big city.
It's a city, yeah. It's the capital of Kerala. But when I was recently had a conversation with a journalist about this who's from Trivandrum. And she was for an interview and she was quite angry, like I was shitting on Trivandrum for what? It was like a bit like feeling like a traitor. after everything.
She's from Trivandrum, and
She's from
she
Trivandrum.
felt you were betraying Trivandrum.
She said she felt I was betraying Trivandrum. She was like, people who read about Trivandrum?
What do you know? Huh? What do you know? Yeah.
Yeah, well, what do you know is there, obviously. What do you know is there. But then I have done that with the narrator to admit that I don't know anything. That's there built into the book itself.
Right.
But what she was pissed off was that if somebody from outside Trivandrum reads the book, would they get the wrong picture?
Oh.
And my response is basically that it's a state of mind mostly, rather than anything to do with the city. I know people from Trivandrum who are extremely cultured, extremely well-read, with very active social lives. And I know people like me who complained when they were in the city. I think it's just a state of mind, and it's definitely informed a little by the idea of escape.
Right. Right.
Which is once you do it, you know it's nothing. But
This
before you do it, it's
Sharma Travels is there to take you away.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So I read M. Mukundan's Delhi a soliloquy last year sometime, and I've lived in Delhi for a bit, and for me it was really, I read the English translation, but for me it was really interesting to see a history of Malayalis in Delhi. It sort of changes the way you think about familiar places and even familiar events, and I started thinking, what does that mean when you shift your linguistic imagination about a place that you know? It's almost like one time I went to watch some sort of performance about Tagore, but it was done in Urdu. So all the words about freedom or protest or whatever, which are very familiar Hindi words, were all in Urdu. So that quick shift immediately does all kinds of things to your brain, right? Like neurons pinging happens. So I found that super interesting. And I feel like there is a full, like it shifted my way of thinking about being Malayali in Bangalore also. Like I take it for granted. Like I'm here, okay? But suddenly, and I'm like grumbling about people from other places, like haha. Okay, but so suddenly you're forced to sort of take stock of why you're here. How did you end up here? So I did want to ask you this, and you of course said, I don't know anything, but but I did want to ask you about, like, what is this imagination of Bangalore that Malayalis who are hopping on Sharma Travels have?
I mean, you've seen, I don't know if people have seen this film called Bangalore Days. Yeah, so Bangalore Days is like an encapsulation of the great Bangalore dream.
Would you?
So Bangalore Days is about where are they based? The cousins Kochi.
Disneyland, as far as I can make out, but okay.
There's some version of Kochi, I think. They're based on like story of three cousins who leave their hometowns and come to Bangalore to enjoy life on the big scale. So one of them comes to Bangalore, and he's a frequent motorbike rider, I think. Yeah, he's a motorbike rider. Yeah, and the other guy is a software engineer who's still very connected to his hometown. Brings his mother to Bangalore, and his mother picks up a very cosmopolitan attitude and all of that in a matter of like less than a year, I think. And then he falls in love with a foreigner. And there's one more person, I can't remember. She's the woman who gets married. I'm sorry. The woman who gets married to a Bangalore guy who's still in love with his dead
somebody.
Dead girlfriend. Yeah.
So basically, this is like a quintessential / parody version of the Malayali obsession about just crossing the border and coming.
Is it parody though? I don't know.
I was like, oh my god.
I watch the film every year actually. A couple of my friends.
I'm so sorry.
A couple of my friends, whenever we get together, we watch Bangalore Days because we are here. I don't know anybody who writes the more. Maybe I should get out.
No, but you should say why. That's the curious part. Like, why do you watch it every year?
Why do I watch it every year? I don't know. It just became like a tradition because the film itself started to feel a little ridiculous once we all left.
Kya kaha tha about parody? Excuse me.
No, but I don't think the film is intended as.
Oh, that intention. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
I think it's intended sincerely, but can be watched as parody and enjoyed as parody.
Okay.
Not that I dislike the film. It's a very nice film.
just to
Anybody who has not seen it should see it. And I love
bring us back
Anjali.
from the cliff a little bit, like, okay, just like we are rolling rapidly
Yeah,
into the canyon. What does it actually say? I mean, like, say 10 years later, it's hard to watch it in a certain way, especially after you've lived here.
Yeah.
But do you feel like it does capture a kind of romance of the big city?
It does, I think. I mean, comparing to Trivandrum, even now, the way you live in Bangalore is different. And I know we talked about the small city thing being an attitude thing as well, or like, yeah. But honestly, like the way you live in Bangalore, I don't know if you can, I don't know if everyone who lives in Trivandrum can enjoy the freedom the same way people can in Bangalore. I don't think women who live in Trivandrum can have the same sort of freedom that women enjoy in Bangalore, that women who move from, say, Trivandrum or some other small town, not small, I should stop saying small, some other city enjoy in Bangalore. And by extension, I don't think you can have the sort of relationships that you can have in Bangalore back home.
Good, good. So I have sort of like pseudo-literary question, and after which we can have the audience ask questions. It's something that I was curious about because like I enjoyed the dialogue so much. I loved the way people are just like fighting and arguing in your book. And I wondered, and there are particular points where you mark a person now shifts to English. Like, you know, Srinath has a fit of rage. He starts yelling in English. You mark that every now and then. But it's assumed otherwise that everyone is speaking in Malayalam, right? How did this work when you were writing dialogue? Because your ear is great. So I was just wondering, how were you thinking it through? Were you thinking in a sort of not quite Malayalam English space, or occasionally going back and forth?
Actually, I'll talk about this in terms of the narrator's voice as well. Because when I started writing the book, or started writing a version of this book, it was in third person point of view.
Okay.
And it was, and as a result, it sounded very pompous and very posh and very anglicized and very unreal. Like, I think when you start using that kind of, not that kind of language, it's not like I'm using difficult words or something, but something seeps into the story as well, and it sort of contaminates it and makes it somewhat dishonest. So when I finally somehow stumbled upon the voice of the narrator, I did one thing where I stopped reading books that were actually written in English. I'm not saying I read Malayalam books. I'm saying I read books in translation, books that were translated to English from other languages. Malayalam was one of them. Marathi, Cobalt Blue, Gachar Gochar, Kannada was there, obviously. And then a lot of foreign language books as well. And what I found was that it helped simplify the language of the book to a large extent. And I was no longer writing the pretentious sort of phrases that I would otherwise write before. And I also have this habit of working things out in Malayalam as I write. As in, you write something out, it doesn't make that much sense in English. So you think about it in Malayalam. You run the logic in Malayalam, and then you say, okay, that's where it's missing. I think most people who speak more than one language, I think, will do that. So that was there. In terms of conversations between people, in terms of dialogue, I knew innately by the way I communicate with my parents that most conversations, I take it for granted that's in Malayalam. So I write it with Malayalam in mind.
In your head.
In my head. And I'm not like actually actively translating it or anything, but like it's there. Yeah, it's just I know it's Malayalam.
Yeah.
When it's a conversation between, say, the brother Srinath and, say, his group of friends, then it's English. Right. And I only signify this switch, I think, when there is a scene where I think both of these worlds collide. In scenes where it's just Srinath and his friends and the narrator, I think I just...
Or sometimes when the words are just like weird words. Like Srinath is shouting about wanting space, right? And the father's like, what does this mean? And you get a sense that the shouting is happening in Malayalam, But the father is like, what is this thing that you are asking for? You want me to build you a what now, right? So,
Yeah, he goes like, "Whoa." Yeah, he says, "I need space," and the father goes, "What do you want me to do? Rent a mall or something?" And there's another instance where the brother attends this LGBTQ protest that's happening in Trivandrum, and he comes back, and his father is sort of pissed by saying, "If something happens during these protests, will these people take care of you?" And Srinath calls him a homophobe
right, right.
in English.
Right.
And Appa sort of thinks it's a musical instrument. But obviously, I think homophobe, gramophone,
right,
yeah,
right.
saxophone.
Right.
And then,
And the flip thing also happens, right? That occasionally the father uses words that the sons don't expect him to use, and then they're like, "What? How do you know this word?" And he's like, "Do you think I'm ignorant? Like,
Yeah.
like, do you think I'm a fool?" It's great.
at one point, he claims to know Franz Kafka.
Right, of course. Right. Sorry, did you miss something? Kafka, yeah. So those were, I mean, my last pseudo literary questions. I'm just now going to open
Sure.
it up for the for the audience.
I enjoyed the pseudo literary questions.
Isn't
Thank
it?
you. Yeah.
So the mic for anyone who wants to ask questions. Someone here?
Hi. Yeah, we have a house in Trivandrum, but I grew up in Kochi. So I just I mean, it's very interesting because you've done to me what looks like the opposite of what Manu S. Pillai has done, which is like he's built.
Maybe we should get both of us in the same room to get the actual complete picture.
Yes, that's true. So it's very joyous to see that you speak with this sort of irreverence.
Yes,
and,
I
whereas
actually
he
am very
builds it up-
intimidated by Manu S. Pillai. I'm like forever worried that he'll just come out of somewhere and say, "What rubbish have you written?"
This kind of history of Travancore is not needed. Absolutely. But I just wanted to ask this process of writing. So one thing that is very good about Trivandrum, because it's such a slow, I want to say dull, but such
Say
a
it.
slow city. Like
Manu
you
S.
get,
Pillai is not here.
but you get the opportunity to sit and write, because I spend a lot of time in the public libraries, and like it's a very, very good space for reflective or like any kind of activity that involves writing. But
I
did you write in Bangalore or did you write in Trivandrum is my
I
question.
wrote in Bangalore.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. And a little bit about the process of writing, how much time?
I actually did a draft of the book in 2019, and this was the horrible draft, the very shitty draft. I'm sorry, I just realized that I'm swearing quite a bit. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. Does he swear? Yeah, I've seen his conversations. He just goes like he's so good when you hear him talk. He's not from Trivandrum, I think. Oh, he is from Trivandrum. Yeah, he's the he works as the assistant for Shashi Tharoor. He used to work as who's the MP from Trivandrum. Anyway, sorry, I got derailed talking about my US bill. But yeah, 2019, I did a draft that was very bad and was very big, and it was like 150,000 words or something. And it was actually, whenever I state that word count, it increases every time. When I first talked about the draft that I wanted, it was 75,000 words. Then I said somewhere about 100,000. Now it's 150,000. But it was a very big draft. It was very bad, and it was from the rotating third person point of view. And then I realized that the problem was that I was writing about this this sex scandal thing, and I kept running into the question of, is this a big deal? Like, am I making too much of something that no one really cares about? And that sort of stopped me working, and I abandoned it. That was one of the reasons I abandoned that draft. And then I realized that after a while, I realized that this question of, is this a big deal? Is this sex scandal like this a big deal? Is something that I can just use the book to figure out if I simply export the questions to the characters and have them work it out. Because the characters in the book are forever uncertain about how they should react. They sometimes revert to default responses. They sometimes try to push the boundary, see if somebody, see if everybody's okay with it, and see where the new line can be drawn. And that sort of helped me. And then another thing that helped me was the narrator, which I switched from all this third person point of view to first person. And that helped me also because every time I wrote the book, I had this fear that I should not be writing a book because I don't know much, and I'm not ready to do a book. I should do something else. But with the narrator, what happened was that I started writing in this first-person voice, and I realized that this guy, the guy narrator in the book, is also very clueless. Doesn't know what's going on. Often has opinions that are ill-formed. And this sort of symmetry that I formed, and he's very annoying. This sort of symmetry, I'm not saying I'm annoying, but anyway, this sort of symmetry I found with the narrator helped me actually get the draft done. So, yeah, and then there was a lot of, once I got the basic draft done, there was that editing process that happens with once you sell the book, which was also horrible. I couldn't eat for a while because I kept missing deadlines. Am I saying too much?
No. I was going to congratulate you on the self-mythologizing. It's very good.
Thanks.
It advances all our careers.
200,000 words.
Exactly. Well done.
But I couldn't, Nisha.
Couldn't eat at all.
Couldn't eat at all.
I know.
I was throwing up all the time.
Pavam.
The thing is that I should have asked, what happened was that I missed the deadlines my editor gave me. I should have asked for like 2 weeks. Instead, I'd asked for 2 days. And then after 2 days, I text him again saying, Shariyailla, nadannilla. I couldn't make it happen. Give me 2 more days. And then two more days, I text him again saying 3 more days this time. So I think that made the process much worse. Next book, I know what to do. Will last for 2 weeks. Yeah.
That was a really nice question.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Anyone? You?
Hi.
Hello. Hi. Okay, I think the one unspoken question all of us really want to know more than anything else is your research into sex scandals, right? So, as a proud alum of DPS Arkipuram, I must ask if you looked into the sex scandal of my school and what are some of your favorites?
So I did. So in the first draft of the book, the 300,000 draft, I did include a lot of research into not only sex scandals, but also the various laws involved in getting it removed, and also tech in general. I decided to strip the book of all of this because most people who would read and I sent the draft to everybody who would actually, most of the people said that it was very boring. And this is not a non-fiction book, so I took it all out. And so there was a lot of research that went into that. And I don't think there was any particular case that informed the book here. I mean, informed the situation in the book. It was mostly just, I took it as a starting point of there being a video, which was something I was always paranoid about, in the sense that when I was in college and when my girlfriend and I used to go to hotels, shady hotels, obviously because we were broke, but nice. We would, I was studying in Pune at the time, and I went to Lonavala because that's where we went, because the ones near, anyway, I went to Lonavala, and the hoteliers there were very welcome, too welcome actually. They were like, yeah, come in, everything's nice. Do you want anything to eat, and so on and so forth. And the first thing we would do was check I think all couples do this, so I think, check the room for cameras, and check the mirrors, check the bulb, check everything. So that was that was foreplay, checking the room for cameras. So that fear was always in the back of my head, this fear of being filmed. And it was also, I had it even before that actually, when I saw that show, Just for Laughs Gags. I don't know if there was a show on Pogo TV. Yeah, it was a show on Pogo. It was a prank show. I was always worried that I'd be walking down the street and then somebody would prank me and I would be on TV. Fear has resurrected now with reels and things like that. Instagram reels with pranks. Yeah, and then I realized now that it's being filmed, so it's ironic, a little bit ironic. But anyway, that was there. In terms of pornography in general, what I realized was that most people don't seem to think too deeply about it. And there is no conversation in India about ethical pornography, which is pornography that's filmed with consent, distributed with consent, and all the people participating in it are in a safe environment where each of the activities that they take part in is consented to. And then they are also paid a fair wage. And furthermore, something that's also hosted on a website that does not host other shady stuff. And there is no real conversation in India about that. I read this book called Cyber Sexy by Richa Paul, in which in a lot of interviews people admit that the pornography that they enjoy watching most is Indian amateur. And in India, because we don't have a porn industry or any way to actually create porn officially, amateur pornography is basically in more or less pornography that's filmed without consent and distributed without consent. So people like this. So that was in the back of my head as well. That and this happens. I don't think the porn ban in any way has compacted it, because it's not like. Firstly, all the websites are online. And
I just want to ask, what porn ban?
Yeah, so there was a porn ban, but
like particular websites.
Yeah.
Okay.
Particular websites, like some 300 of websites as well, but most of them have mirrors that are still running. And anyway, those are not the most criminal websites. So yeah, this conversation about this point about ethical pornography was also in my head when I wrote it, but I didn't want it to be sort of evangelical. I didn't want to preach about the need for ethical pornography or anything of that sort. But yeah, that's something I hope. Sorry, does that answer your question?
I think he did. He said he did not look into your ancient sex scandal from
No, I
DPS
did.
Arkapuram. I
did
think
look
that
at
was
the-
answered.
I did look at the DPS case, in which I think the owner of the website was finally arrested. That was the verdict of the case. Yeah, the owner of the website in that case was arrested, and that was something of a. It didn't end up doing much because most of these websites are hosted abroad. This was one case where it was not really a porn website where it was distributed on. I think it was some kind of an e-commerce website, which is why the Indian government was able to. And I don't know. I think we should look. I don't know if I'm remembering this accurately, but yeah, he was basically brought to trial for the fact that the MMS clip was put up on sale on that website.
Actually, the thing that reminded me most about this, I mean, parts of the conversation around this sex tape in your book is the Mysore Malige video, where people start having sort of fetishizing this particular tape and building a romantic culture around it.
Yeah, I think that's more because that myth, because there is an urban myth about that clip.
Who was it? What happened to them?
Who was it? What happened? Where are the couple now? And then there are theories as well. The couple have
There's an actual documentary about it. Bharat Murthy's documentary. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Okay, so this is about 10 years ago. There was a sex tape which made the rounds. It looked consensual in the sense that it was shot.
The filming looked consensual. Yeah, filming scene.
Yeah, and it was shot in a sort of romantic way. The woman in it is very attractive, and it had a big hold on people's imagination. It went viral, and then there was a lot of conversation about who is it, who are they? I mean, and everybody said, actually, I know her, and she's left the country. They've moved to some other whatever. They've gone to Kazakhstan, whatever. All of those things.
There's a suicide rumor.
There's of course a suicide. They have killed themselves, 100%.
They were killed also.
They were killed also.
They were married, and the police station was enough.
And then they were killed outside. Correct. So all of those. And so then I think Bharat Murthy, who's a cartoonist and documentary filmmaker, he made a film about this fascination for this sex tape, and he sort of it's an interesting document to watch.
Yeah, I've seen that one as well. I saw it a long time ago, but I remember that he was coming at it from the film as a art point of view, I think.
And honest, and I think what I remember is him being fairly honest that he's a consumer of porn, and here is one particular sex tape that has caught his imagination, and then just speculation about it. Yeah. There are other questions, things.
I'm IHS. I should know how this mic works. Um, Actually, so I loved your book, but it also worried me a lot because I'm in that in between generation. I'm not as old as Srinath's parents, but I'm not as young as Srinath. And so I kept asking myself through a vacation, that too, what would happen if someone I knew, like a kid I knew, went through this, and what would we do? And it was really interesting because I found myself empathizing with all the characters at once and also hating all of them at once. Like, I felt really bad for the parents. Like, what is this idiot who doesn't converse with his parents? But at the same time, I also get what this guy is going through. And I hate the parents too. So have you had any parents who vented or felt like, why the hell would you write this? Put us under stress? Or, not your uncles, aunties who get what it is about, but people who get what it is about and then be like, now who do we like in this? Like, who do we become?
Actually, interestingly, even people from my generation seem to like the parents more as characters rather than Srinath and Anita, the couple in the video. I don't know if that's, maybe it's just the people who have talked to me so far. I've not actually heard from parents who have read the book. I've just heard that the parents in the book are very sympathetic. Yeah, I've heard that. Except for the girls' parents, who they don't like, but they really like the father and the mother more than the couple.
So Aravind does bad things to the reader who sympathizes with the parents. Like, towards the end, there's like a kind of twist, not a murder mystery suspense kind of twist, but an emotional twist, which then forces you to say, hey, why have we been, sympathizing with X or Y person? And there is a kind of stock taking that happens towards the end, which I think really, like, I mean, for me, I thought it was a very, very difficult thing to do in writing.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted all the characters to be, I mean, this everyone says, wanted all the characters to be grey. I will say it as well. I wanted all the characters to be grey. But also, yeah, basically I didn't want even the police officer, I didn't want any of them to be, there's a police officer who's very annoying. I wanted everyone to be not acting from a place of cruelty, but rather from a place of, rather because of the fact that they have been calibrated incorrectly or like calibrated with the wrong set of values. How's that for pseudo-literary?
Please, coming at me with like some vernier calipers. Like, okay.
Sorry, ma'am? I actually think I was understood better in Sweden than I was in Germany. In Sweden, an interesting conversation I had with the Swedish journalist was that apparently they feel this concept of shame quite a lot in their society as well. They told me that they feel that even for good things, in the sense of anything that makes them stand out too much, they perceive as shame. I mean, obviously, when you stand out, you feel embarrassed. But so I asked her if she was talking about embarrassment rather than shame. But she said it's not exactly embarrassment because it's more negatively tinged. So it's got a little. I think it's got to do with standing out. I think, and breaking a system that's in place by being sort of unique. But also. I think the further you go from the place of origin, wherever the book. Mm. I mean, it is pretty remarkable that it got translated into all these, not all these languages, the languages that it got translated into. But I mean, I think that goes to show that there is some kind of universality there. But of course, something is lost in translation.
There's one person here and someone there as well. There. Oh.
Hi, I haven't read the book yet, but I really want to now. But I hate to also ask a serious question because this has been a very delightful interview. So I thought it was really interesting how you said that the narrator kind of is like, oh my God, I know Werner Herzog, and like has kind of cosmopolitan swag, and is like taken back when his father is like mentioning Kafka. But of course, there is, I mean, Kafka in Malayalam is like a thing, right? Like, so I'm wondering kind of what is the role that the internet and digital culture plays in this kind of idea of expansiveness and cosmopolitanism, as opposed to the kind of cosmopolitanism that kind of, you know, entered Kerala through translation and through a very kind of rich cultural life based on its own affiliations to world culture and communism.
Ooh.
Sorry.
No. Let me think about
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think one thing is that I guess all the references that we have growing up became global. Like we have the, it's no longer just like Nisha and I were talking about this the other day about Malayalam movies. It's no longer just connecting via Malayalam movies. It's more like whatever the global hip thing is. So that effect of I don't know, is it globalization? I guess it is. Whatever the effect of that being in that global cultural bubble is definitely there. I don't know how I'm not sure how it stands next to the influences that we already have. But I realized recently that, for instance, all my Malayali influences are sort of, so somebody asked me who my influences were, and I realized that I'm able to pinpoint all my Western influences very accurately, and even when it comes to Indian writing in English. But then there are, when you grow up, when you have no idea that you want to do anything with the stuff that you're acquiring, there is a sort of implicit culture, that intrinsic culture that sort of you imbibe rather than study or read with intent. So I realize that I'm unable to pinpoint that, and that includes Malayalam cinema to some extent, because I watched whatever my parents and grandparents had on the TV on Sunday and Saturday, Surya TV, Asianet, Cinemala in the evenings. But aside from that, I did not know who was directing these films. I did not know. I knew the actors because pop culture, but like I didn't know who wrote them. I didn't know who directed them. Yeah, I just know that I think the biggest thing that felt intrinsic, or like biggest thing I imbibed, is that being funny is important somehow. Based on my parents' reactions mostly. So I don't think that Nisha, help me out. I don't think that answers her questions.
No.
Does that?
I'm really glad she asked this question, because I kept thinking about it also, because I mean, there is this conversation that you and I had about, oh, we shouldn't peg small towns as places of, cultural vacuum. But there is also a specificity to Trivandrum. It is home to IFFK.
Yeah.
I mean, it's home to all kinds of like.
Yeah. I remember
right?
going to see Kim Ki-duk.
Yeah,
at
right, of course.
Yeah,
It's,
you always
it's
see
necessary.
Kim
From
Ki-duk,
nursery,
yeah.
they take you to Kim
Kim
Ki-duk.
Ki-duk.
Right, of course. I mean, so the weirdness of growing up in a city like that, where, of course, you have a father who, in a moment of rage, has some Kafka moment, but that's not his central identity, in a way that other people for whom making it big on Instagram or refashioning, in this case, I won't give away what happens to the sex tape, but refashioning the sex tape in a way that makes sense in a different aesthetic. I'll have to say too much, and that will give away plot points. But when something happens to the sex tape, it's refashioned in a way that is distinctly not a cosmopolitanism of the past. It's a very cosmopolitanism of the present, of a global internet influence present. So there are gaps that you see, and those gaps are really fun to read. It really adds layers to the book.
Yeah, that's a very good answer, I think. And also, I realized now that Nisha said this, that the interesting thing is the parents are not as internet aware as the kids, which seems like a really obvious point, but I think that adds to the gulf in a very immense way. They find the internet frightening, like the cosmos where everything is weirdly connected and no one knows how. And yeah, so I think that definitely adds the bridge between. Sorry, not bridge, gulf between.
Hi. Yeah, I really enjoyed reading the book.
Thank you.
And the parts that I found the most enjoyable were how you sort of captured the family dynamic and the little ways in which everyone like relates to each other and how they respond to each other. And it's very distinct, like how the parents communicate with each other, how they communicate with the younger son, how they communicate with the older son. And it's very relatable. And I was just wondering if this was something that you, like, were these observations that you had made over the years that you sort of brought out in this book? Or once you decided to write this, did you like look into like Indian family dynamics with a different view? And like, how did you go about sort of capturing that?
No, I think it just came organically when I started writing. Whatever seemed natural, I put down. Some tweaks, of course, you make when you're editing, where you think some character has to say something that's more like a singer. Like Nisha was talking about that line that the father says, the embassy thing. That was not there originally, and I added that later on because I felt that I had to give him some redeeming quality, because otherwise he's, yeah, what is he? So I gave him a little bit of snark there. So that those sort of adjustments and amplifications happened throughout the book, but I did not consciously do research into family dynamics or anything of that sort. I think because these are all people that in some way I feel I know. But yeah, that relatability is sort of a double-edged sword, I feel, because when you write relatable stuff, you also risk moving towards stereotype. So that was something I was worried about throughout the process of writing the book. Most of the tweaks I made to the book were to find that fine line between what's relatable and what's very stereotypical. Yep. Thank you.
Are there any last questions? Was there a hand up? But now that your hand is up, do you want to ask a question? Okay, I think we're done. Yeah? Okay. So thank you, Aravind Jayan, for writing the book and saying many confusing things.
Of course. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for everyone who's read the book, to everyone who's read the book. And yeah, please don't hold me liable for anything that I've said today evening. And apologies for swearing. I just noticed that Nisha didn't swear at all. Feels sort of
I'm like
abandoned.
really cleaned up and all. You should buy the book. The copies are outside. He will sign it in some nice handwriting.
I'll try. Thank you.